Alrighty guys, and welcome back. And this is chapter 4 of our training series on production pipelines. And we left off texturing Testa's limbs. And so we finished that, and she's looking pretty good in the renderer here. Alright, now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at Arnold's primary settings really quickly to sort of dial in our look and dial in our different parameters that we're seeing here in our IPR. So if we go into our render settings, we never actually set our renderer to Arnold, and one of the great things about C4DtoA is you don't necessarily need to right away do that. You can see what's going on in Arnold, and you can see all the materials and everything without actually having even set any settings, which allows you to really get in here really quickly and do look dev and get things kind of sort of going before you go in there and you tweak your settings out. It's really nice. But what we can do is we can go ahead and get rid of the hair render since we're not going to need that anymore. And we can get rid of some of our multipass stuff. We're not going to need that either. Just clean up our standard renderer a little bit, but we're not going to be using that. We're going to be using the Arnold renderer. And as soon as we change to the Arnold renderer, you'll notice that a lot of the settings for the standard renderer go away. And under the Arnold renderer, we have the basic Arnold settings. And these settings virtually don't change between Arnold versions. So M2A and I believe H2A will have mostly the same settings, and so will S2A or soft image to Arnold as well. So the really great thing about Arnold is really the only primary settings that you need to worry about really are here, and that's pretty much it. There's no effects that you need to set. There's not like 6 or 7 tabs in ambient occlusion that you need to set minimal samples and maximum samples for. There's no 6 different ways to do global illumination, each being a little bit different depending upon, what's in your scene or anything like that. All you're doing in Arnold is you're fighting noise. So all you're fighting in Arnold is, and we can do a middle click hold here to actually drag around, and a middle scroll wheel to zoom in and out of this window here. But in Arnold, all you're fighting is this noise, and the higher your settings are, or depending upon what's in your scene, the higher or lower these settings are depending upon what's in your scene is going to allow you to eliminate that noise. And so the noise comes from different areas depending upon what kind of materials you have in your scene. And these are the 6 different areas that noise can come from. So the camera AAs is your master setting. And when you change this to something like 6, you'll notice in this window here that your sampling has changed. And so what has happened is it's taken the 6 and squared it. So you'll get 36 samples, camera AA samples. And this is your anti-aliasing. And this just cleans the whole entire image as a whole. This is the only way that you can clean motion blur and depth of field in Arnold, which are really amazing in and of themselves as well. Here in this render engine, they're actually quite usable here in Arnold. Although due to wanting more control, I like to do my motion blur and my depth of field using AOVs instead, which we'll go over a little bit later. But this will, as you noticed, increase all the other samples as well. So the other samples are also squared against themselves, and then they're multiplied by the AAs. And that's how they get their number of samples that they're going to use. So the diffuse samples controls how clear the diffuse is. It also controls in a little bit of a way how many bounces that you also have in the scene. So it clears out the color, and at lower settings it also controls how many bounces of light The glossy will control reflections and refractions, or reflections and glossy reflections rather. It'll control both. So for materials that have a specular aura reflection, and once again, like I said in the previous tutorial, typically you're not going to be dealing too much with the reflection. You're going to be dealing primarily with the specular. But both of these are controlled by how many glossy samples you have. So if you have noise in your reflections, you're going to want to increase that. Refractions would be transparent objects, opaque objects, or semi-opaque objects. The subsurface scattering is going to allow us to clear up some of the noise that may occur in her skin, or in a candle, or in something that's waxy, if we're using subsurface scattering. If your scene is not using subsurface scattering, which can happen semi-regularly if you're not doing any human characters, you can actually set this to 0. Refraction as well, you could set to 0 too if you're not dealing with any refractions. She's going to have refractions in her cornea, so we're going to need some refracting samples. Alright, and that is pretty much it. Volume indirect, I believe, relates to volumetrics, which we'll be getting into in a later tutorial as well, when I show you how to bring pyro effects and cloud effects from Houdini over here into Cinema 4D and use them in the Arnold renderer engine. But you almost need to mess with nothing here. The AOVs, I rarely mess with the AOVs themselves here in the AOVs tab. Generally, those will get messed with the Arnold drivers, which I'll be going over when we get ready to render her out, her animation out, and send it over to Nuke and After Effects. The diagnostics and the overrides all really don't need to be messed with. So really there is not much to Arnold as a renderer itself, and in fact the fact that you don't have to even right away even set it up, you know, goes to show the power of it. It's a very simple renderer. You just get in there and you just start going, and because you have a accurate preview of exactly what you're going to get when you send this to your render farm, or when you render it out on your machine, there's not a lot of guesswork at all as far as what you're getting. So that takes care of that. The other thing we might want to do is we might want to reduce the resolution of our image so we can get a little bit faster feedback in the IPR. In the IPR window, you have the scale here, and this is going to control how much resolution the IPR is actually using itself to render. So if your scale is 50%, it's going to be 50% of whatever the value is of this here. So if we go back to our IPR, we'll notice that our IPR has now reduced our resolution to 640 by 360. Our zoom is at 100%, so we can see the whole entire image in here, but our scale is 50% of our original value of our resolution, which is going to allow us to get extremely fast renders, basically close to real time, if not real time. As we go through, we could actually hit play and we could animate this. We'll actually see the IPR actually keep up, and we'll actually see the animation in virtually real time. The actual final resolution animation, not some sort of approximation of it, which is an incredible thing. It's something that I've never been able to do in any other renderer. Not even in Arnold, in Maya, I've been able to do that. So that's awesome. This version of Arnold, once again, is super fast. But all right. So with that done, to save us some time, what we can do is, once we're happy with this material, and we're just going to go ahead and look it over just one more time. We potentially, I'm debating, but potentially we might want to put some specular on her skin to give a little bit of reflectivity to it. Actually, yeah, we already have a specular built in there. So we need to add some specular weight in order to actually be able to see the specular affecting her skin. So we can go ahead and, up this. I usually up it to a relatively semi-low value, somewhere around 0.6 or whatever. And human skin is rough, so we're going to go ahead and increase our roughness value to about 0.8. That's going to give us a rougher surface, specular. And so we're going to get some of that reflectivity from her image. All right. And with this material set up, the great thing is we can go ahead and actually hold control and go ahead and duplicate it. And we call this C4DtoA. And since this network is pretty similar to the limbs network, we pretty much can just go into our network editor now. And we can go ahead and just replace the images. Now, there's two ways we could do this. We could go ahead and click on the dots here and pick a image out of Testa's directory. So we can come over here, come to C4D, come to texture, and we can go ahead and grab her torso diffuse. But since we know that the name is torso, we're going to go ahead and do that for this one. But since we know that the name is torso, we can actually just go ahead and copy the torso and just go ahead and just paste it in every area that it needs to be pasted in. And I believe Arnold is actually rendering right now. No. I just need to hold Alt and middle click in order to move around in here. Alright, and so we can just replace the name. And since the naming convention is pretty common that we've used overall, it's very easy for us to go ahead and duplicate the materials and move things around. So once you've created one material, if there's a bunch of materials that are the same, you can just copy and paste. And this network functionality makes it extremely easy for you to get in there and just quickly rename things, which is a pretty awesome thing about Arnold. And then now that that's done, we can go ahead and we can actually just delete the torso. And let's see. Yeah, it looks like all the materials are using that layer color functionality there. So we just want to just double check the material real quick just to make sure that there's nothing special about it. And then we can go ahead and just add the torso to everything else. So come in here and we'll just drag those on, and Arnold will start to update once we get the correct materials on certain areas. And that'll take care of that. And so one, you can see that she's got this really nice glow around her due to the Fresnel, which is really awesome. And this really realistic, really nice fall off of a glow of sorts due to her specular. And she's really got this nice color coming in due to the subsurface scattering. So let's continue along this path here. And I like to save pretty frequently, mostly because, like I said, I was on the beta team, and Arnold had a tendency to crash on a semi-regular basis. Because it's so fast, it didn't really matter that it crashed a lot, to me, honestly. But still, depending upon what you're doing, if you bog it down or if you click too much, or if you're doing something particularly heavy, it could maybe run into an issue. We've worked through most of the bugs, but I save on a regular basis just because. But it's so fast to work in this program that even with a slightly higher percentage of crashes than other render engines, even despite that, you still get work out 10 times faster than you would with something like the standard renderer, even when it doesn't crash at all. So with the face, let's see, I believe it's got the same general similar type of stuff to it. So pretty much all we need to do is just go into our network editor and replace the torso with face, if I'm not mistaken. Let's just check. Okay, yeah, it's definitely called face. And so if we do this, we will effectively have created our face material really quickly. And excellent. And so what I like to do is I do like to dock my shader network editor on my second monitor and work with it there. You can leave it open, and when you click on different Arnold materials, it just automatically update the network to that material, so you don't have to ever close it. I'm just closing it here for the sake of being able to show you guys on the same screen what my shader network looks like. But we can delete the skin face, and now we can just replace everywhere where the skin face is going to be. And actually the lip and the nostrils also use the same material. Difference being that these two will have more of a different type of subsurface scattering to them. So what we could do is we could duplicate the material, and we could just apply slightly different settings to this one. So this is going to be lips, nostril, material. And I'm just putting the underscores in there once again, just to keep a nice naming convention for my materials here. And so we can delete these two, and we can go ahead and add this material to both of those areas. And for the lips and the nostrils, what we could do is we can come in and we could actually tweak the material out at our leisure. You know, we have this extra control now that we have a separate material for those two, and we could change the subsurface scattering on those to get a much more interesting look. Now this could be kind of confusing, but just look at this area here and you'll notice this is just the lips nostril material, even though that these nodes say limbs, and that's because we copied from the limbs and we didn't change the actual name of the material itself here. It just allows us to name the nodes and make it a little bit easier to find out, you know, what node does what. We don't necessarily need these names per se. We could actually go ahead and delete them if we wanted to. In fact, I might do that just to make it easier on myself for future copies of this material. But that is that. So now that we've done the nostrils and the lips, let's go ahead and do a bit of a more complicated material. So let's go ahead and grab the eyelashes here, and we're going to go ahead and make a duplicate of the lips and nostril material as a basis. We'll call this eyelash material. And we've already got our network editor open here on the second monitor. And let's take a look at what the eyelash material gives us really quickly. So if we come in here, we've got a base color. And this color is actually being defined by the Cinema 4D shader itself as a deep black. The reflectance channel doesn't really have much to it. I'm not going to really need too much in the way of a specular of sorts. What's unique about this material is its alpha and its displacement. I'm not going to really use the displacement, I'm going to leave that alone, but I want to concentrate more on the alpha. So we need a alpha channeled material that also has a color as well. So what we can do with the eyelashes is we can come in, well, yeah, let's take care of the material first. So the eyelash material selected, we can come into our shader network and we can start to delete some of these images. We're not going to be using a bump channel in this image, so we can actually delete the bump, and we can go ahead and plug the standard shader directly into the beauty port. That's going to give us a standard kind of sort of look there. We don't need a composite shader either, and we can actually just delete all these ports. So what we can do is we can plug our image into the opacity channel now. Of the refraction. And so our image is going to control exactly how opaque our eyelashes are. Alright, and then our color is just going to control the color. Eyelashes are also slightly specular, so we can go ahead and add just a tiny bit of specularity, and they're going to be more reflective than anything else, so we can bring down our roughness to about 2.4, just kind of putting these numbers in kind of sort of off the cusp a little bit here. You don't have to be too accurate. In fact, the less accurate you are with some of these, the more, I think, character your character actually has. Nothing needs to be really exact with these, and you can just dial it in, and you can just see how you like the look. And that's what's really great about Arnold. It allows you to really just play. Alright. So that's pretty much it for the eyelashes. We're going to go ahead and delete the original material. And we're going to go ahead and apply the eyelash material. And one of the things that you're going to notice is that the eyelashes didn't actually go transparent. And that's because in order for you to have a semi-transparent material in Arnold, you need to add a tag, C4DtoA tags. You need to add an Arnold parameters tag to your actual object. And you need to tell your object that you don't want it to be opaque. You want it to have some transparency. So if we turn that off, we're going to see that instantly those eyebrows went away. And if we were to come in really tight on those eyelashes, we should see a little bit of the black tips kind of sort of coming through there. And as the sampling starts to clear, it starts out with a negative sampling, which allows you to get like really fast renders. And then it's going to start to tighten that up progressively for you and clear out your image. But we can already start to see a little bit here that we're starting to get some of that eyelash coming through. So that's how you do transparent materials in Arnold. We'll have to do something similar with the hair as well. But I'm going to go ahead and take care of the hair with you guys, and then I will take some time out before the next tutorial to go ahead and texture up the rest. And I'll leave it as an exercise to you guys to work on a character of your own and go ahead and texture her up. And it's a pretty simple thing. The network shader gives you a lot of power. It's not really too difficult. But let's go ahead and do the hair, because it's going to be a little interesting. So we can go ahead and grab the skull cap. And let's go ahead and duplicate the eyelash material here. Actually, we'll duplicate the lips and nostrils material, because this hair cap material is going to be similar to some of the other materials, except for the fact that it's going to have a little bit of transparency. So go ahead and call this skull cap. And we'll open up the network editor and we'll go in here. And so the skull cap material itself, if we go ahead and go to the skull cap and lock it down so that we can work on it and the Arnold material at the same time. So if we come in here and we kind of minimize this a little bit, make some room here. we'll see that first of all the skull cap has a color. So let's go into Testa here, grab that, and what we can do is, now that we know that this is the skull cap, and that's pretty much the material it's going to be, we can go ahead and look at the name, and we can see that it's TO1 here. Let me go ahead and rename this and call it Testa Skull Cap Diffuse. And that'll take care of the naming convention for that skull cap, which is really great. And we've got the bump. Okay, so we can come over here, and pretty sure that these are the same. So we can call this Testa Skull Cap Bump. Okay, this is probably definitely going to be the Testa Skull Cap Specular. And this right here looks like it's going to be her alpha map, which we can call Testa Skull Cap Opaque, or opacity. And so we've got 4 different maps here. So this is quite similar to our original materials. We're going to want to come in here, and we're going to go ahead and grab the diffuse. We're going to come to our specular here, and in this particular case we're not going to need our composite node, so we can get rid of that, and we can just drag this directly into the specular color, and this is going to be our skull cap specular. Alright, we're making some good progress here. We've got our bump map there, which is great. And we could use the same technique we used for the face as well, and for the torso, where we could just go ahead and grab the name skull cap and just basically replace if we wanted to. This material doesn't have subsurface scattering, so we can go ahead and knock that link out and go ahead and delete that port. I just right click on the name of the port and just do a delete to do that. This material does happen to have one more element to it that some of the regular materials don't, though. This one has an opacity. So what we can do is we can hold Control and go ahead and copy a node. We can go ahead and plug this into the refraction opacity. And what we want to do with this one is just change the channel from specular to opacity. And that'll take care of our network for the skull cap. Alright, so if we come over here and we go ahead and delete the skull cap, and then we find out where that material is on our character. And so it's going to actually be here. It's a part of a different object entirely. So go ahead and grab that and drag it over here. And now her skull cap is set up. Now what we need to do is we need to do the same thing that we did on Testa's mesh. This object has transparency to it, so we need to go ahead and add a parameters tag and unlock our attributes manager so we can actually look at that parameters tag. And we'll go ahead and just set this to opaque turned off, and that will eventually take care of our issues. We're going to want to do just a few other things to this. We're going to want to go ahead and add the rest of the materials. And once we do that, we should see a change in our overall textures as a whole. So let's go ahead and grab the base material, or base texture here, and we've got an alpha channel for it, a bump, we have a specular, and we have some color. Alright, let's go ahead and take care of these. We'll go ahead and copy the skull cap, and let's call it hair strands, and open up the shader network here for it. And let's do some changes to the names of our materials here. So we know that this is going to be, take our B, make that an underscore, and let's call this test hair strands bump. And I'm gonna go ahead and highlight all this and do a Control-C. That way it's very easy for me to just copy to the other materials. So we'll make this a lowercase s. Here we go. And then we'll take this one, and this is going to be our diffuse. Add a diffuse to the end of that, and this one here is going to be our opacity map. And there we go. Alrighty, and so this is asking for our diffuse, so let's go ahead and grab that. And the rest of these are just going to be hair strands. And we'll do a copy. We'll use the copy and paste technique to go ahead and finish off the rest of these images. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and minimize that, and I'll go ahead and delete the base hair material that we had there previously. Take the hair strands material, and we're going to go ahead and copy that over. We should immediately see a bit of an update. Now there's a couple of reasons why it's going slow and it's not updating quite as quickly. One of those primary reasons would be due to the fact that this material that we've created has subsurface scattering still turned on because we turned it on for the face a while ago. So it's taking a while to render that and the transparency for subsurface scattering as well. So if we just go ahead and bring the weight of that all the way down to 0, because the hair doesn't need subsurface scattering, we should have better luck here. Now the skull cap material, same thing. We're going to want to go ahead and get rid of its subsurface scattering as well. And that should render it a lot faster for us and give us the look that we're going for. That being said, we can still see that an area here is white, which means either our skull cap isn't getting the correct transparency, or there's an underlying white area on our actual mesh. If we go ahead and look at our mesh, we will notice right away, give it just a few moments to update and save. We can actually probably go ahead and turn off the IPR and refresh it. Occasionally you're going to want to do that to kind of sort of get Arnold to re-kick in. And Arnold will also, it's also exporting the geometry as well, so it takes a while for it to work. That's a common thing. Since it's an external render engine, it has to export things. And if you have sub-polygon displacement or displacement on your mesh, then you're also going to have to deal with that as well. And that could take some time also. One of the limitations of ray tracers, it's probably one of the reasons why RenderMan was so popular for so long, was because it allowed you to do displacement almost for free. But even the new version of RenderMan now also uses ray tracing. So Our eyelashes also have a little bit of an issue, and I believe that partially has to do with the subsurface scattering in combination with this map being wrong. So if we go ahead and change this map out to the lashes opacity material, that should also look a lot better. Give us a much nicer look there. Let's go ahead and save those changes. And so our issue is with the way Arnold kind of sort of works internally. If you're using selection tags, they can get in the way a little bit of Arnold being able to see that a certain material needs to go into a certain place. There are workflows in Arnold that are a little bit better for dealing with complex materials like this, where there's a lot of different components to a particular character. But what we can do is we can take our hair selection, and if we double click it, we should get it to pop up here. So we have a hair selection, and then we have another hair selection. I almost prefer, I think I prefer this one. It's a little bit more, her hair is not so far over her bang. So we're going to take this one, and we're going to actually delete this one off of the mesh. And then we're going to take this one here, and what we can do is we can duplicate the mesh. And we can call this C4DtoA hair cap. And so this can be a hair cap for us. And that's going to allow us to have our hair be a little bit separate, and then we can animate that along with the character. Alright, I'm just going to get rid of the skin and the weights for now. Don't really need them on this object quite yet. We're going to take the hair selection, double click it. We're going to go ahead and invert our selection, and we'll just delete the rest of the mesh, and then we'll do an optimize, and that'll get rid of any stray points. Alright, on this side of things, for the mesh, we'll just go ahead and get rid of the selection tag itself, and that'll clear things up quite nicely. Now we can hide the hair cap. We don't need it to be visible to use it for actually growing hair, which is great. And so we've pretty much cleaned up that texture. So now if we turn back on our hair, we should see that we should have nice transparency. So the skull cap has effectively disappeared here, and we've got it just where it needs to be. Awesome. So with that, we've taken care of the hair, and all the other materials did need subsurface scattering, so we can keep it on all of those, which is really great. So we'll call it a quits here, and in the next tutorial I'll show you how to use the UDIM workflow in Arnold to be able to take those hair textures and basically only have one texture tag on your character and have Arnold automatically be able to find all the textures required for the hair. So we'll look at that next. See you guys then.